I just spent 4 months living in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and in this video, I'm going to share what I enjoyed most about the city. First things first, what I enjoyed about the city itself. I really enjoyed the old European architecture. Walking down downtown Buenos Aires and seeing all the old buildings was super cool. When I was there, I checked out Palacio Barolo, which is a cool spot that I definitely recommend checking out. It's a massive building that has cool architecture, great views, and it even has a lighthouse at the top, which is kind of unique. Another thing that I liked about Buenos Aires is how extremely well planned it is. Aside from the freeway or whatever you want to call it down there, the main avenues in the city didn't really have much traffic. They had a ton of lanes and they were never backed up. Buses rarely caused traffic. Most of the busy spots had separate bus lanes and the flow of traffic was always pretty good. To someone who is not far away from Toronto and is used to Toronto traffic, it is night and day how much better planned Buenos Aires is than a city like Toronto. Probably one of my favorite parts about Buenos Aires was the connection that you got with nature while you were in the city. Even though it's a massive city, every street you walk down has these trees hanging over it. And not only does this provide a lot of shade, but it also makes you feel like you're in a little bit of a forest. Like it's like walking through a tunnel of trees every street you go down. There's also these massive parks that are all throughout the city that when you're inside of some of them, you don't even feel like you're in the city. You feel like you're out in nature in a remote area because the trees are so big. You don't really see a ton of buildings, and depending on where you are, the traffic is honestly pretty quiet too. You don't really hear it a ton either. They're very well maintained and they're just a nice spot to go through a walkthrough. This was honestly one of my favorite parts of my day was walking through these parks. I even took the train outside of the main touristy areas and ended up in this neighborhood, and I'll throw the drone shot up on screen. But when you look at it, it looks like there's just buildings coming out of the forest. And when I was walking through the streets in this neighborhood, the buildings were quite a ways away from the road, and I literally felt like I was walking through a forest, and there's just buildings sporadically placed amongst the trees. Like, it was a super cool experience walking through this part of the city that I never have experienced anywhere else. While I'm talking about different neighborhoods, every neighborhood you go to in Buenos Aires has its own unique style and vibe to it. Like, I stayed in Palermo, and when I go downtown, it had a completely different vibe. Or if I went to Puerto Madero, it had a completely different vibe. And even the sub-neighborhoods within Palermo, they all have a unique character to them. For instance, if you go to Palermo Nuevo, it's got a bit of a different vibe to it than Palermo Hollywood or Palermo Soho, and so on and so forth. Like, each neighborhood feels like it's one of its own, and it's not like all combined, and it adds character to the city. Another thing that I enjoyed about the city was the luxurious parts of the city, like Palermo Nuevo or Puerto Madero. You would go for a walk through these neighborhoods, and the fancier restaurants and bars definitely made you more motivated to keep improving your lifestyle. And honestly, if I ever was missing home, I'd just go walk through one of these streets. Especially in Puerto Madero, it felt very similar to a North American city, even though the rest of the city was very European and didn't feel like North America at all.
Yeah, friend Bentley, Lego. Why they be down the boy? Tell them it's part of the plan. I'm just a young adult feeding them slaps. The gains in the palm of my hand. Whoa, they want me to fail, this is personal. They sleeping on me, this is perjury. You make it, nobody has heard of you. Tell them that the pregnant beat for the surgery. Killing it, they ain't gotta gas me up. Do it myself, I'm drilling it.
The next thing that I loved about Buenos Aires is the lifestyle and the convenience of it. For starters, the city is extremely walkable. My gym was literally a block and a half away. The grocery store was within a 15-minute walk. Within a 15-minute walk, I could go to an endless amount of bars and clubs and cafes and restaurants, and there is no real need to get an Uber. I can count on one hand how many times I used an Uber in Buenos Aires. Now, to be honest, I used Cabify for the most part down there because Uber is not very prevalent, but you get the idea. I only really needed an Uber to and from the airport, and then I used one because I was a little concerned about public transit for the first little bit, but I could have got away with just using public transit, as the public transit in Buenos Aires is usable, and I didn't feel unsafe using it. I felt just as safe using their public transit as the public transit in, say, Toronto. Speaking of public transit, their public transit system is amazing, as you can literally go anywhere that you want to in the city, and it's only a few bucks. Like, it costs next to nothing, and it's so convenient. There's subway, train, and bus routes wherever you need to go, and it is extremely well designed. Now, one thing that kind of sucks about Argentina is that they go out extremely late. However, I found this awesome, as whenever I wanted to go to a restaurant, I could go to whatever one I wanted and never needed a reservation because it was always empty when I wanted to go to eat. It would fill up as I was leaving, but when I got there, I was literally the only one in the restaurant. So if you're going to a restaurant between 5 and 8 p.m., you're also going to enjoy this benefit. Now, one thing that I really liked about the city was how fast my internet was. It was the fastest internet that I've ever had. Bear in mind that I'm pretty remote where I live in Canada, so the internet here sucks, but any other place down south that I've been, it hasn't been this fast. I was able to stream video games with my brother and watch Netflix whenever I wanted and never had an issue. Another major benefit of Buenos Aires is how safe it is. I felt just as safe as I do back in Canada when I was in Buenos Aires. I was vlogging on the street, walking around with my camera out, not really having a care or an eye out for what others around me were trying to do, as I wasn't concerned of someone coming up and stealing it out of my hand. Some other spots I would be, and you do have to watch out for motocoros, which are guys on motorcycles that come and steal your phone and stuff. But as long as you watch out for them, you should be fairly safe. I found the city extremely safe and had no worries about my safety while I was there. The next thing that I loved about Buenos Aires was its food and drinks. Before I got to Buenos Aires, I had no idea what an empanada was, and by the time I left, I wished that every other country had them. They were one of my go-tos for anytime I would order food in via Pedosia or Rappi, and I'm definitely missing them now that I'm back in Canada. Another thing that I loved about Buenos Aires was how cheap the steak and the wine was when I was there. I pretty well ate steak every day when I was down in Buenos Aires, and I definitely enjoyed my fair share of wine when I was there too. And if I did this every day in Canada, it would definitely hurt my bank account. But when I was in Buenos Aires, it was quite sustainable to eat this way. I never really found it hurt my bank account too much. I mentioned all the bars and clubs being near my place, but what I didn't mention was how different each bar and club was. Like, my uncle and I wanted to go to an Irish bar one night, and we walked, found one, and had a drink there, and then we went not far down the street, and there's like 5 or 6 other bars that were all condensed, all different vibe and a different style to them. And we had a drink pretty well at every single one of them. And each one brought a different thing to the table. Yes, the majority of Palermo, the bars, clubs, and cafes are very prevalent. But there's even areas inside of Palermo, like there's an area in Palermo, Soho, where there's like a park in the center. And outside the park is just a ton of different bars and everything. And each bar has outdoor seating, and it all merges into the next one. So it's a very cool spot to go if you're wanting to go out and meet people and have a good night, as if you get bored at one place, you can walk to the next bar and get another drink, and you're not really confined to the people that are within your bar. You can see hundreds of other people that are sitting at different bars and socialize with them if you think it's a cool group of people. The next thing that I found pretty cool about Buenos Aires is its atmosphere and vibe. It's very European, as you will hear from a lot of people who have been there. The buildings are very European, and it just gives you that European vibe. However, there is a touch of Latin America in it. It's slight, but it's still a little bit noticeable. Like, some of the food markets look very Latin American, and the fact that you can order a motorcycle Uber is kind of cool, and you wouldn't get that in like a North American city. So in that regard, although it's mostly Europe, it still has a bit of Latin America in its roots. And that's pretty unique. You honestly won't get that anywhere else in the world. Another thing that I found cool is while you're on the main avenues, the city feels massive. Like, if you were to cross the road, you would cross like 16, 18 lanes of traffic. But when you get off the main avenues and get onto like some of the back streets, it has a very local feel to it. Yeah, each neighborhood has a different vibe, which helps with this. But even in terms of the places that you frequently go to, like the butcher shop or the fruit and vegetable market or the convenience store, since there's so many of them, you quickly get to know who works at each one, and they start to get to know you. So you get a very local feel that way, even though the city is massive. As unlike other cities, you're not going to a store with thousands of customers that they see every day. It's a pretty tight-knit community in the area around your apartment. And another thing that you gotta love is the weather in Buenos Aires. Now, some complain that it's too hot in the summertime, but I honestly loved it. You get AC and it makes it enjoyable, and then when you're walking around outside, I honestly didn't find it that bad. It does get shitty in the wintertime, but as long as you go during the summertime or the spring or the fall, you're going to enjoy the weather there. It's very similar to how it is here for me in Ontario. Like some days it rains, but for the most part it's sunny and nice weather. So all these things made Buenos Aires a very unique experience, and I definitely recommend going if you're someone who is thinking about going to Buenos Aires. Now, there are a few things that I wish I knew before I went there, and that's why I made this video right here. It's the 17 things that I wish I knew before going to Argentina, and don't forget to click subscribe.